Good afternoon and welcome to week 2 of Paulian Provocations, a little guide to your reading for this second week of our time together in Dynamic Faith of the Church, History of Christianity to 1500. As you can see, it's a beautiful afternoon here in Wisconsin, and I just want to take you through some questions that arise from our reading, first in MacCulloch and then in Carol and Osiek's chapter on family life among early Christians. So from MacCulloch, basic point is that what you have on this page 19, a tangle of Greek and Jewish ideas and memories underlie the construction of Christianity. And it is that tangle, it's hard to unravel when we're hearing from our early Christian ancestors a Greek influence and when a Jewish Hebrew influence. But in any event, understanding the Greco-Roman past of our earliest Christians is pretty crucial contextually. Worth pointing out that Greek art really featured the human form, and if you want to understand the origins of the notion of the incarnation, it wouldn't hurt to pay attention to the art of sculpture, in particular in Greco-Roman societies. Temples, similarly, give us a long trajectory of significance down to today. Temples, of course, housing a particular god, one of the members of the pantheon, and really serving as a center for a polis, for a city as well. Clearly, it was the Greeks who bequeathed to us the notion of allegory, and you might ask yourself the question, why don't more Christians appreciate the significance of allegory in the sacred scriptures? Fact of the matter is, to read most of Christian scripture literally is to read it allegorically. There's just a deeper notion of truth at work in Christian scriptures than there is in the typical scientific imagination. The importance of the polis for early Christianity, that Greek notion, is worth considering as well. Recall here, Horsley, most early Christians were probably peasant villagers or from small towns and cities in the empire. For Aristotle, of course, this is page 26, to live well was to live in an actual physical city. And there's a pretty significant debate among historians of early Christianity about how much Christianity was an urban movement. Certainly in Paul's writings, you get that sense. And how much a village, rural movement. There is somewhat of a tension there. Also a tension that MacCulloch really points out nicely between the notion of the ecclesia and the notion of the kuriaki. That is, the notion of the church as ecclesia, this assembly of the polis, or the church as belonging to the Lord. And that tension is still very much alive and well in liturgical practice, in all kinds of ways, down to today. How much is the church a public entity, and how much is it rather dedicated to worship of the one Lord? You might say, how much is it horizontal and how much vertical? On page 30, MacCulloch asserts that Christians inherited Greco-Roman culture and thought, and when they have talked about questions of faith or morals, it has taken extraordinary effort of will and imagination to avoid doing so in ways created by the Greeks. That's very nicely put, probably understated even. It's pretty much impossible to think as a Christian without thinking in Greek thought forms. Notably Plato with his allegory of the cave, and that we live seeing only images and shadows of the reflection of the true light or of the substance of things. And of course, Plato's notion of God's oneness and goodness, especially as articulated in Timaeus, very influential in the early Christian thought as well. A couple other things to consider, kind of by way of tangents, the role of drama. The fact that Euripides and Aristophanes and some amazing writers bequeathed to the earliest Christians this legacy of drama, which of course emerged out of ritual and then also informed ritual as well. As anyone who's led a congregation knows, there is a serious performative element to every act of worship that you ignore at your peril. Historia, that is the emergence of history as a discipline and as something that early Christians certainly learned from and imitated in some ways in the Gospels, in that distinctive form, is worth considering as well. What's the long legacy of historical writing in the origins of Christianity from the Greeks and down to today? Page 42, MacCulloch asks a pretty important question, namely, why did Roman influence last? So many empires came and went. Rome lasted until 1453 in the Byzantine Empire, and that's important to consider. You might find interesting that what MacCulloch points to, and I think accurately, is that the Romans changed the Greek emphasis on exclusiveness. That is, the Greeks identified everybody else as barbaroi, barbarians, and the Romans didn't have that either-or distinction. MacCulloch puts it that there wasn't a sense of racial exclusiveness on the part of the Romans, and it was precisely because of this adaptability and refusal to create either-ors along the lines of race and culture that Roman society, Roman culture, which of course brought it into it many ideas and practices from the Greeks, endured. Finally, from MacCulloch, page 45, it's important to consider the amalgam of the political and the divine in the era of the Roman Empire. Certainly, Augustus initiated this, and ever since, an emperor incarnated the divine. Of course, Christians scandalously assert the same about Jesus the Christ, eventually coming to call him the incarnate one. So the question is Christianity an imperial religion? And how different is the incarnation of Jesus from the incarnation of the divine in the emperors? Finally, if you're a Monty Python fan like I am, you might ask the question, what have the Romans ever done for us? And I'll post a little video from the life of Brian pointing out how significant that legacy is in early Christianity. And it's just a fun satire as well. All right, turning to Osiek then, and her chapter on the family life of early Christians. She reaffirms what Horsley saw, that most Christians, early Christians, were poor, coming from villages, towns, cities, as well, living in usually brutal conditions, very close quarters with next to no privacy. I think that's important to point out when we're talking about public theology. It's worth considering that there really was no other kind possible in the Roman Empire for the earliest Christians. Worth pointing out as well that Osiek sees a real precedent for Christianity in the burial societies that were common among Roman common people. That is, folks would gather together in and pool their resources as a way to ensure a good burial for themselves and their family members down the road. And you can see conceivably an analogy, or at least an influence to the origin of Christianity, and certainly in the Christian emphasis on death, and that emerged quite early in the tradition. Osiek also lifts up helpfully, I think, the importance of the lived experience of violence and sexuality in public life. There are some really significant implications for Christian practice when you take that into consideration. That Christianity, that Christians, early Christians, simply participated in a culture that was ruthless and brutal, and probably desensitized people in many ways to the kind of compassion for victims that Christianity has come to specialize in some ways. So sort of a counter imperial element within earliest Christianity, and especially among the people who were, of course, the most, the everyday people as opposed to the elite, who were among the most common victims of imperial brutality. Slavery. Osiek writes some really important things that have just profound implications for preaching, for interpreting scriptures, and so forth, namely that it was an everyday reality for the earliest Christians, and by and large, Christians did nothing to end it. This is vital and troubling to consider. And when you start reading Jesus' sayings and parables with this in mind, it becomes even more troubling. And here there's a book by Jennifer Glancy, that's Glancy, if you're interested in this, that details even more the relationship between early Christianity and slavery. I believe that's the title of the book. In fact, Jennifer Glancy. Despite that rather sad story of violence and the enduring practice among Christians of slavery, by all evidence, Christianity did clearly appeal to women. And Osiek points this out on page 53 and does a nice analysis of how and why that was the case. Tension in Roman society between higher status women could still very much be members of public life, even though the official ideology was the separate spheres with men, the patriarch, the paterfamilias, and representing the family in public life, and the women responsible for the domestic sphere. So the ideology didn't hold status trump gender, Osiek says, and that seems to be pretty evident. And then Christianity added on to that flexibility a greater egalitarianism, hardly the sort of egalitarianism or gender fluidity that we can see as a cause of justice today, but certainly in contrast to early or to Hellenistic practices, Christianity created an opening and helped pave the way for the kind of egalitarianism that today, in my estimation, is the vision of Christian ethics and teaching on gender and sexuality. Complicating that as well is the honor-shame dichotomy and the deeply embedded notions of honor and shame connected to notions of public and private, male and female, slave and free, and so forth in early Christianity. So pay attention to that. And finally, check out the story of the Shepherd of Hermas. I'll post a link to the actual document. It's well worth reading. Osiek puts it well, saying that things aren't well in either Hermas's family or in his church, and in that sense, it's an illuminating look at some of the struggles that our early Christian ancestors had, and in that sense, perhaps can strengthen us for whatever struggles we face as well. So happy reading. I hope I posed more questions than I provided answers. That's kind of the point of these Paulian provocations. It's to get you thinking as you work your way through the reading and prepare to do your reading response paper, which is about Christianity and empire. So thanks much. Hope you're having a great week, and I look forward to reading your responses, seeing your videos shortly. Take care. Bye.